People often feel that music is somehow a luxury or some frivolity, some entertainment. But actually, I think music is a basic human requirement. Music doesn't just do one thing, music can do many things, and that's why I think you can never get bored of it. I'm not a musician, but I've spent most of my life involved in music, and one of the things I've seen through the many examples of music in many different places around the world is just how powerful it is and how essential it is to human life. People often say that music is a universal language. It's become a sort of cliché, and I don't think it's true. I think the fact is that human beings are so inventive. All around the world, they've invented different styles of music. So, for instance, the traditional music in Japan is completely different to the traditional music in South Africa, to South America, or here in Central Europe. So, I think that's why, for instance, people in Brazil are not listening to much Korean music, or people in India are not listening to much Czech music. But I think what is universal is the power of music to reach the heart, and the openness to music is perhaps the universal language. Of course, the power of music is that it doesn't need language. And here we are in the Czech Republic. How many people around the world will know Dvořák's New World Symphony? Millions, millions and millions of people will know Dvořák's New World Symphony. How many of them are speaking Czech? Not very many. So Dvořák's New World is reaching people through the miracle of music to their hearts. It's something that touches people all around the world. I think this is one of the many powerful things that music can do. The interesting thing about music is the way it can transform you, actually. If you think about listening to sad music, it's actually a really enjoyable experience. If I think of a song like Amy Winehouse, Back to Black, or if I think of a lament, a Hungarian lament, or Tchaikovsky's Pathetique Symphony, they're very sad. You could say it's depressing music, but actually the experience of listening to these sad pieces of music isn't depressing. It's actually enjoyable and it's uplifting. And I think even better, it's transformative, because you perhaps will start listening to this music because you're feeling sad. More likely than not, by the time you come out of it, there's a chance you're feeling much better, you're feeling much more content than you were going in. So that's one of the gifts. One of the most remarkable places I've been is called Theresienstadt, as the Nazis called it, in northern Bohemia. It's a small town. It was built in the 18th century. It was a garrison town. It had walls around it, and for that reason, during World War II, it was a useful imprisonment place for the Jews in Central Europe, mainly from Czechoslovakia, who were sent there as a sort of staging point for Auschwitz. The remarkable thing about Terezín is that the conditions were appalling. It was a town built for 5,000–6,000 people, crammed sometimes with 60,000 people. Overcrowding, people were dying from ill health, lack of food, poor conditions, all these things. But the amazing thing in Terezín is the start of a cultural life, a musical life, a concert life. Totally remarkable. Many people are under the mistaken impression that this was started by the Nazis. It wasn't. It was the people, the inmates in Terezín, who created this cultural life. Why? Because for them, it was an essential part of life. These were people from a cultural background. Many of them were professional musicians or working in theatres, stage directors and so on. For them, this was not only a means of survival, but a way of getting back to something like a normal life. I've spoken to many people who are there, and their feeling was that it was a way of somehow returning to normality. There were 4 composers in particular in Terezín who composed brilliant music there. What's even more remarkable is the quality of that music. Their music is something of real quality. I think one of the interesting things about Terezín is it was a very remarkable circumstance. There aren't many times in which circumstances are so extreme and the role of music becomes so important. People who I've spoken to who were there basically say that the music was like a medicine, and this applied both to the musicians who were playing it and to the people who were hearing it. People were going day after day to hear concerts, and they say feeling incredibly refreshed and renewed by it. And interesting, some of the pieces written in Terezín are sort of escapist, to try and go back to a happier life, far away from these circumstances. Other pieces are about the circumstances. So Der Kaiser von Atlantis, this opera written by Victor Ullmann, is an amazing allegory of life in Terezín itself, with this mad emperor, Hitler, and death giving up work so that people can't die. And at the end of the opera, Death goes back to work, and he sings this sort of beautiful aria where death is sort of a welcoming thing. In the circumstances of Terezín, that's remarkable. I think it's these unique circumstances and these extreme moments that are really interesting. Another example is in Afghanistan. The Taliban banned music for 6 years. So for 6 years, people couldn't listen to music. Music wasn't played at weddings. It was happening a little bit underground, but that was really dangerous. So it was even very little of that. I went to Afghanistan to make a film just after the fall of the Taliban, and it was unbelievable, the hunger and thirst for music. People were bringing out these huge ghetto blasters, polishing them down, playing cassettes. Lorries were coming in from Pakistan with piles of cassette tapes, DVDs to play music. The country was in ruins, in chaos, and they said, oh, it's too early for people to be worrying about music. Rubbish. The moment things changed, people wanted music. Even though they were hungry, even though they needed food, they also needed music. I think one of the great things about music is it breaks down barriers. I think hearing somebody's music is hearing their story. And particularly if you don't speak their language, music is their language, and it's telling you their story. So you feel closer to them. So you are not so alienated from this person as you were perhaps at the beginning. And I think that's particularly true these days when there is a sort of demonization of Islam because of terrorists and extremism. Music can play a really powerful role in overcoming these barriers. So it's breaking these things down that music can do. And okay, it's another cliche, but music can make the world a better place.